Thank you very much for this today and for coming. To Tom Smith and to others here, especially our great team with strategic initiatives and resource development, and most especially to Sanjay for the miracle that is open learning. I'm going to address the topic that's in front of us, but I want first to set the stage for this audience. There's some tough critics out there, some scoundrels I know. Um, and man, if I can bring 10% of the passion that some of you bring to life and to work to this talk, it'll be a win for me. I want to tell a story. It's an MIT story. It's kind of embedded into legend, rightfully so, in American history. It's also a story about fundraising. But part of this story involves, and I'll show the actual receipt, MIT actually giving money back to a foundation. So, Tom, if you are on this call or when you watch this, you may have to disconnect so your laptop doesn't spontaneously combust or whatever.
Have a barf bag nearby.
Wait, can you mute? Where's the mute? Okay, it's November 1965. A lot is going on in the world, and James Killian gets a telephone call. Recent president of MIT, Killian Court, all that, chair of the MIT Corporation. He gets a call from a representative of the Carnegie Corporation in New York, asking him if he would like to chair a commission. It came down to him and James Conant, the president of Harvard. And Carnegie chose, as they do, they chose wisely. So they're asking him if he would like to become the head of a new national commission on the future of media and communications, and specifically on the future of educational television. Killian jumps at it. He's thinking about what to do with himself after, and he assembles this commission, a bunch of people, some university characters, some people from media, industry, arts and culture, Rudolf Serkin, the pianist, Edwin Land, inventor, head of Polaroid, Ralph Ellison, one of my heroes, the author of the novel Invisible Man. So this is Ellison asking Killian and MIT for his $47.50 of travel reimbursement, like any good writer worth his salt, right? And the commission has a bunch of meetings, 8 over 28 days, here at the Institute in New York, California, several at Endicott House. They talk to people, 225 of them. They visit TV stations, 92 of them in 35 different states. They start writing up their findings and ideas in an office that they rent at 26 New Street. Molly, if you could advance the slide. That's this building now. And they debate, if we could go to the next slide. What is this thing that they're yabbling about? Educational television? Boring. United television? Public television? Maybe that's what we should call it. This group publishes a book of forceful recommendations, this thing. And because Killian is such a player, and so is the funder, by the way, the guys at Carnegie have just funded extraordinary studies on race by Gunnar Myrdal, medical education from Abraham Flexner. The report becomes a bill, the bill becomes a law, and within 2 years, they've spent $500,000, and President Johnson is on live television in front of the country signing the Public Television Act of 1967. Here's part of his speech. Today, he says, we rededicate a part of the airwaves, which belong to all the people, and we dedicate them for the enlightenment of all the people. We must consider, he says, new ways to build a great network for knowledge. Not just a broadcast system, but one that employs every means of sending and storing information that the individual can use. And then he goes on. Think of the lives this will change. The student in a small college could tap the resources of a great university. This is 1967. Yes, the student in a small college tapping the resources of the greatest university in the hemisphere. The country doctor getting help from a distant laboratory. A scholar in Atlanta drawing instantly on a library in New York. A famous teacher could reach with ideas and inspirations into some far-off classroom so that no child need be neglected. Eventually, I think this electronic knowledge bank could be as valuable as the Federal Reserve. And such a system could involve other nations. It could involve them in a partnership to share knowledge and thus to enrich all mankind. A wild and visionary idea. This is a president, by the way. Imagine that, like, after what we, not at all. Yesterday's strangest dreams are today's headlines, and change is getting swifter every moment. I've already asked my advisors to begin to explore the possibility of a network for knowledge and then to draw up a suggested blueprint for it. The system he was signing into law that day, he said, will be free and it will be independent and it will belong to all of the people. So they spent $500,000 and they get public television and radio. Not bad. In fact, they didn't spend all 500K. Molly, if you could advance to the next slide. Tom, here's the receipt from the MIT archives where they've refunded $4,300. You know, we're a scrupulous lot over here. You could buy an island with $4,300 back in 1960s. So this goes down in history as one of the great philanthropic interventions of the entire 20th century. 50 years later, totally seemingly unrelated, MIT president Charles Vest goes on to speak of something else, more familiar to us now, a transcendent, and I'm quoting, accessible, empowering, dynamic, communally constructed framework of open materials and platforms on which much of higher education worldwide can be constructed or enhanced. A meta-university that will enable, not replace, residential campuses, that will bring cost efficiencies to institutions through the shared development of educational materials, that will be adaptive, not prescriptive. It will serve teachers and learners in both structured and informal contexts. It will speed the propagation of high-quality education and scholarship. It will build bridges across cultures and political boundaries, and it will be particularly important to the developing world. Okay, MIT. Okay. Let me make 3 quick points and try to provoke some discussion. First, we are in an epistemic crisis, a state of what one report calls severe truth decay. The health pandemic that we are in today, the economic and jobs crisis that we've plunged into, the unhinged political violence we are witnessing, are all a function and a direct function result of the severe information disorder that we find ourselves in. We've been lied to consistently about almost everything, the core stuff, our lives, people we love, our health, our elections, discrimination, injustice. But I have good news. We've been led out of the darkness, this kind of darkness before, and it's also been a lot worse. Killian and Lyndon Johnson and his main speechwriter, Johnson's main speechwriter, Bill Moyers, referred to it in 1967, the Enlightenment. Newton's physics, Rousseau's political philosophy, Linnaeus's taxonomies, Montesquieu's laws, the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, the age of reason. And at the heart, and this is my second point, at the heart of it, there was perhaps no greater offering to truth and to reason than the 22 million word encyclopedia, 22 million words, that the French Enlightenment philosophers started writing, compiling, and offering to the public in 1750. The act of doing this, and can we advance the slide? Thank you. To compile all the world's knowledge and pack it into one place that could be published, distributed, shared, was mind-blowing. But so was what was inside. The encyclopedia smote all the 18th century orthodoxies. No proposition can be accepted as divine revelation, they wrote, 1700s, right? In their article titled Reason. If it contradicts what is known to us, either by immediate intuition or by obvious deductions of reason, it would be ridiculous to give preference to such revelations. The entry for fortune in this 28-volume encyclopedia spotlighted the gross inequalities of wealth already evident in 18th century Europe. In the article on the slave trade, they wrote, and this is the 1750s, mind you, the purchase of Negroes to reduce them into slavery violates all religion, morals, natural law, and human rights. But even more, the encyclopedists announced from day one that their giant project would be, as we would say today, fact-based. How? There would be an underlying and overarching commitment to the verification of all source materials. Verification is a long and painful process. Diderot, the lead author of all this stuff, wrote in his introduction to the whole enterprise, the preliminary discourse. We could go to the next slide. Thanks. We've tried as much as possible and by the way, these Killian's materials, the set of the encyclopedia, all at the MIT libraries. So, thanks. We have tried as much as possible to avoid this inconvenience by citing directly in the body of the articles the authors on whose evidence we have relied on, and by quoting their own text when it is necessary. What this meant in practice was revolutionary. There would be no accepted truths but for those that could be proven and cited. It's amazing. Plus, 23,000 articles in this collection had links to other articles in it, what librarians and others call cross-reference. So the articles on cannibals ends with the mischievous cross-reference, as one historian later describes it, cannibals. A mischievous cross-reference to other articles. See under Eucharist, communion, altar, etc. So where does your work, our work, all the stuff that MIT and other universities pump out daily, I mean, the stuff that we have and want to share, and the ways in which we share it fit in to the life cycle of fact-based knowledge? I think verification is a key to us getting out of this mess that we are in today. In fact, Diderot's commitment to reference, to citation, to verification, continues in the Enlightenment's most important successor project, Wikipedia, founded by Jimmy Wales and his colleagues 20 years ago this year, and inspired by an article that Richard Stallman, also once of MIT, wrote in 1999. It's the foundation of what today's Wikipedia terms verifiability. And in many key ways, that once again is likely to be the foundation for truth and knowledge in society today, especially online. Verifiability, Wikipedia says in its statement of principles, means that material added to Wikipedia must have been published previously by a reliable source. Editors may not add their own views to articles simply because they believe them to be correct, and may not remove sources' views from articles simply because they disagree with them. Verifiability is a necessary condition, a minimum requirement for the inclusion of material, though it is not a sufficient condition. It may not be enough. Wikipedia, of course, is one of the world's most important popular websites. It's the world's most popular non-commercial one, and it is an irreplaceable source of verifiable information, open to any, open to all. Its processes are transparent. We could move to the next slide. You can see its edits live online. If you go to this website, which is produced by hackers affiliated with Wikipedia, you can actually see Wikipedia being edited in real time, and there are about 90, 85, 110 edits per minute. They've also set it all to music with each, type of edit identified. The Internet Archive is another of these kind of critical nodes for us. It's actually working together with Wikipedia now, digitizing books so that links to sources in Wikipedia link all the way through to the books themselves and render images and text on the cited pages. So in a Wikipedia article on Martin Luther King Jr., for example, the reference link to a biography of Reverend King by Taylor Branch now hot links to the entire readable book online. That work is essential. Can we take verifiability further, especially as our crisis deepens? Because it won't go away. Information about vaccines, literally a pox on our house now, about elections, you name it. Can we improve citation for the medium that's beginning to overtake us all, which is video? Can we make resources on the web verifiable? What is a citation like in a podcast? This is for Brett, like Talk Radio. Talk Radio, and this footnote is brought to you by Taco Bell. That's, it's super important. The use of footnotes and the research techniques associated with them, Princeton's historian Anthony Grafton writes, makes it possible to resist the efforts of modern governments, tyrannical and democratic alike, to conceal the compromises they have made, the deaths they have caused, the tortures they and their allies have inflicted. The use of footnotes. Speaking of torture and lies, here's my third and final point. The battle of truth versus lies, knowledge against ignorance, is not new. My book opens in the 16th century with a guy who got burned at the stake for trying. A guy who he was trying to share knowledge. A guy who got strangled, gets burned at the stake, and it's the same guy who gets burned at the stake and strangled. He's roped onto a piece of wood, lit on fire, and as he's on fire, they come around to strangle him. Or actually, they strangle him first. I don't know. They strangle him first, but they don't kill him, so they light him on fire. This is as one does in the heart of the 16th century. We could go to the next slide. Here he is. William Tyndale was his name. And his thing was to translate the Bible so that people could read it and hear it in ways that the apparatus of the church and the apparatus of the crown did not want it read or did not want it heard. Worship was like television back then. But television and newspapers and magazines and the web all together, once a week. It was like listening to my talk today. But that's all you had, for media, God forbid, representing the outside world for the whole week. I'd be here at a pulpit reading stuff to you, not from my book, but from something that looks like this. One book, it's the same book, the Bible, and no other book every week. Stuff gets all over my keyboard. If it were my book, that'd be great for sales. But actually, you could not have your own copy of it. You could not buy it. You could not own it, not in the original languages, and especially not in a language like English that you could understand. No. Another guy in Tyndale's time gets burnt at the stake for having the Lord's Prayer in English written on a scrap of paper in his pocket. Anyway, I'd be here reading this, every outside bit of media or information to you every week, and I would be lying. It would be like watching Fox News and nothing other than Fox News. I would be saying, you have to give money to me, otherwise you won't get to heaven. It was like being down at Mar-a-Lago, with nowhere else to go. You have to do this, you have to do penance, when the word in the Bible was actually to repent. You have to do that, you have to engage in charity, where the Greek word actually meant to love. For confess, which is what the church said it wanted back then. Tyndale fellow, this Tyndale fellow gave us the simpler and more personal and more accurate knowledge. Tyndale was a genius. Ultimately, his work with the Bible gave us the English language as we know it today. There are as many idioms from Tyndale's translations as from Shakespeare. He knew 7 languages: Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, completely devout. By all accounts, in fact, when he's in jail, he converts his jailer and his jailer's family. Anyway, this system of lies and toxic information, he would have none of it. So he wades through the Bible from Genesis 1 through Revelation 22, not only owning the thing upon pain of death, translating the thing upon pain of death, but printing and distributing it upon pain of death. And he worked with all the publishing technologies of his day, connecting personally with book designers, paper suppliers, printers, boat captains, horsemen across 16th century Europe, the YouTubes, the websites, and the Twitters back then, to bring the knowledge and the book that contained it into the hands of the people. We could go to the last slide, actually. Thanks. So they chased him down. Here he is, getting the treatment. You can see church people on one side and the king's people on the other. They chased him down and they killed him for it. The battle of knowledge against ignorance, truth versus lies, is not new. And if you're a professor, producer, an author, a librarian, a bookseller, a publisher, a curator, an archivist, today you're involved in it. But if you start professing, publishing, distributing the wrong kinds of things about the Nakba in Palestine or Palestinian state, for example, or publishing the wrong things about the fact that our military shoots and burns civilians in our name, or the fact that the Democratic National Committee is shot through, corrupt, or the fact that our governments and communications companies can track and share every move we make, true, or if you try to make all the academic and scholarly journals that are, decades old, free to the world, or, to be fair, overseas, if you're Alexei Navalny and start publishing truths about the Russian government and Orthodox Church and all that corruption, the forces that exist will come for you. They will track you down. They will drive you into exile or madness or prison or worse. So these initiatives that I speak of or spoke of at the front are things that we should not forget. We've been beaten down so much. I don't know. We can't forget them because we're kind of curating the 20-year legacy. Kurt and Krishna and colleagues of OpenCourseWare, which Beth was talking about. We've been beaten down so much with lies, Trump, racism, COVID, so many forces. It's like we're all asphyxiated, like this guy. It's hard to draw inspiration, which, is from that root word. I can't breathe. It's hard to draw inspiration for the big picture. But this is the big picture house over here, MIT Open Learning. And we always can make it happen. So thank you for, the time today. I'm stopping here at 4:30 and would love to, there's a lot more in this book. And I should say, Molly, I think as I said I would, that anybody who wants a free copy of this can get one. It's a book that is for sale, but it is also licensed CC BY because, I have to do it if I say it. And anybody who wants a free PDF of it in the meantime, just write to me after this and I'll send one over to you on horseback.
Thank you so much, Peter. There is so much there that we needed to hear and that cuts to the core of our work. Kurt,
Peter, my friend, thank you for a fantastic talk. So good to hear your thinking on this. Thing that was top of mind for me as I was listening through this, and I'd love to hear your thinking on it a little more. What's the state of play look like to you around institutions such as MIT, which are looked to as trusted sources of this stuff, versus other people who, for whatever reasons, don't have access to those institutions, but maybe are worthy of more attention and more respect than we're able to give them easily within the system?
It's a great question. Thanks, Kurt, and thanks, for the leadership and the inspiration that you bring to all of this stuff. I would answer it off the dome, as they say, this way.
Right
Like,
here,
right. You threw me. The knowledge institutions, first of all, need to be a little bolder than what they've been, and then what they've sort of represented to date. In part to make a space for all these other people with verifiable information and incredible knowledge to contribute. It was striking to me during the 4 years that we had of Trump, which seemed like 400 years. And without which I don't think I could have gotten this book written. So thanks. How feeble the individual and collective actions of major knowledge institutions was during a time which ended in effect with, there's an article in the Atlantic or Harper's, I think, current issue, is there a coming civil war? My book ends with that vision of, society divided in half and attacking each other violently, which happened. Damn thing went to press in December. January 6th, this goes on, and nobody's got the book in their hands. How can I benefit? I think these knowledge institutions, and I'm talking about universities, I'm talking about New York Public Library, not to name any particular one, but every single museum, because if they're coming for truth, they're coming for you, whatever that line was, first they come for. So I think, Trump was a boob. But the next guy that comes around, maybe a bit more sophisticated, maybe less surprised at his initial victory than this guy was. And boy, we want to be ready. So that's part one to the answer. But like the other part is, how do we construct a place for people maybe unaffiliated with these research institutions or name brands or whatever to contribute? Invariably, there are more smart people outside of MIT. If I don't know if one can say it, I might get excommunicated. I might wind up like, if I say, but like there are more smart people outside of MIT than there are inside of it. Just the numbers, I think, would say, prove that. And but I think the commons may be one way to do it. And if we can create a stronger commons where verifiability is the name of the game, where somebody we don't know posts something about Newton's laws of motion or linear algebra, if our guy Gil Strang can look at it and go, actually, here's a link to my theorem, or, to this old formula. That'll do us better.
Thanks, Kurt. Shigeru Miyagawa.
Hi, Peter. Thank you so much. That was great. That was fantastic. So this idea of freeing knowledge, which I like very much. And so we know that Gutenberg's printing press had this effect of freeing the Bible authoritarian church to more making it available to the masses ultimately. And people draw a parallel between the printing press and the internet. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are there. I mean, just as a small local example of this is, when we started OpenCourseWare, Chuck Vest, who you referred to, one of my heroes, said the reason why we're doing OpenCourseWare is that if you share money, it disappears, but if you share knowledge, it increases. And the printing press and the media in general has that kind of multiplying effect. And I wonder if you see internet, things like Wikipedia as doing that, or is it more being used by, people who have done well under sort of neoliberal approach to politics and economy, the top 2%?
It's another great question, and you're one of my heroes, so thank you for asking it. And in something that, you've written and shared with me, you make this, you deliver this quotation from a faculty member. I just happen to have it close at hand. The day MIT announced OpenCourseWare was the proudest day of my career at MIT. I think that's like, you know what that is? That combines like pride and humility of the utmost magnitude in both directions, right in one sentence. I think that's the most amazing thing. I would say that the internet is like the printing press on steroids. And I can't do justice to that comparison in this talk, but it is exactly what the book, it just is about. It's like the first Enlightenment was the Republic of Letters. And this new Enlightenment maybe is, I call it the Republic of Images, which is just a way to be clever and try and, but it actually is an internet that has video at its core. And if we continue to handle it in the wrong way, we're going to go in the alarming, in the side of the things that you expressed some concern about. I think if we go in the way that favors non-commercial institutions, we'll be doing a lot better. We are one of them, even though there's revenue that we derive. WGBH, makes GBH with public we're kind of all public broadcasters now, by the way, with the internet at our disposal. And I think that the challenge for us is to kind of create a stronger commons, to have knowledge institutions step up and link arms, and to make sure that what happens to video, which looks so new and so complicated today, Clayton, I guess video is complicated, come on, yeah. But it is, we've had print for 700 years. We've had, cinema film for 125. It looks complicated right now, but 575 years from now, it might not look as complicated as it does now. So I think we have to make sure that video is like hugely wrapped up in all kinds of rights issues that we torture ourselves about. And it's just so ridiculous. It's just, there's a whole new way of thinking that we need. So yeah, I think there's a direct parallel between the internet today and the Republic of Letters in the past. And it's the new Enlightenment. What can I tell? What can I tell?
Tom Smith.
Peter, thank you for that eloquent discussion. Having read the book, it was fun to see you try and break some of the thoughts in the book down to those 3 comments about truth decay and verification, and what I'm calling courage from William Tyndall and others. So if truth decay is the enemy, and I think it is, it's just not about sharing knowledge. In our world today, truth decay is a real demon. Can human verification and human boldness be enough, or will some kind of technology like AI or other things need to help us along the way? in battle, truth versus lies.
Courage, by the way, is the word that I was looking for when I was writing this talk, and I couldn't remember it. So thank you. That's exactly what this third point is. It's courage. It's boldness. It's bravery. I think the machine is critical, especially when you look at video archives, which are part of what I talk about in this thing. We can search, we can scan, I guess, search, index a printed book of 256 pages and 1895 value. We can do all that pretty fast, but we cannot take the Eyes on the Prize documentary series that was 14 hours long and log by hand. We cannot take the BBC archive, and somewhere I have the estimate from the BBC, because I used to work with those guys a bit, like and the archive of how many man hours it would take to actually unpack how many images, words, other sounds, music, local news. Like, it's something like it would take 40,000 years to do this by hand. Literally, like a number like that, as crazy as that. When we talk about foundation interventions, obviously it will be clear to people that MIT, working together with Carnegie was one, MIT working together with Mellon and Hewlett was another. And I wonder, like, the Mellon Foundation has begun to support AI work with video archives at WGBH. I think that, there are opportunities for that foundation, for others. Packard Humanity. I won't spell them all in case there are other people raising money on this call from other places. But I think that AI is the future for securing verification on the internet. I don't know enough to be able to answer exactly how today with what I know, but I know I'm in the right place to be looking for the answer to your question. And that's right here.
Peter, Lana Cook has a question. She's juggling some family duties at the moment, but I think a really good question around who are the knowledge creators or sharers in the world? Wikipedia empowers people around the world to add to that open knowledge. And how can MIT better empower more people around the world to see themselves as creators and sharers of knowledge?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think one way is to strengthen the commons by contributing to it in the way that the Metropolitan Museum of Art has done, in the way that all kinds of extraordinary European museums have done, in particular in the Netherlands, in ways that the Digital Public Library of America has done, which is founded by Robert Darnton, who was the Harvard University librarian and who is the preeminent scholar of what? The Enlightenment. So it just goes to show you. He's emeritus now, writing on Cape Cod today. I think that we have to strengthen the commons first and foremost, and then to recognize that there's some role we can play by tagging knowledge contributed by other people or creation sort of poured into the web by other people in ways that elevate that stuff. Google was founded by these guys with a commitment to information science, and specifically within that commitment to references and to cross references. That's what the PageRank algorithm is all about. And it turns out that the way they designed Google and the way Google still works, if you're a citation that's quoted by 20 people at MIT versus being a citation that's quoted by 25 people, down the hill in Lakeville, Connecticut, we're not at MIT, that thing is going to surface much higher on search, because legitimate sources of knowledge authority have recognized it from the perspective of Google, which, though it is a commercial enterprise and everything, is pretty cool. So, is there part of our responsibility, not only to figure out, okay, we need to give space to faculty and others, when they publish digitally, that would be great. But is there a way to think of how we can give space such that, I don't know, some of the offerings from open learning, for example, could cite sources that are not necessarily in professional journals or in the places that we're used to seeing them, but from the it's a great question, but from the creators. Don't ask. Hopefully your kids will be bothering you enough so you can't ask a follow-up question, because I can't answer it.
Hopefully she can type it into chat, but we'll see. Thanks, Peter. Clayton.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for the talk. It's been great. As you might guess, this isn't a fully formed thought that I have, so bear with me. When everyone, I think the printing press is a great analogy to the internet, but when everyone has, not the Gutenberg printing press in their pocket, but has, a New York Times and the ability to create, and thinking about how do you index all of that and the weighting of the truth. And I think you're getting at that just a little bit. How do you think about that weighting, particularly when there are times, and to try and tie this back a little bit, where there's an attack on truth and science, and ultimately this idea of tyranny of thought. I'm not sure that's a fully formed question, but could you give me your thoughts on that?
I'll give you a whatever the opposite is of a fully formed answer. It's an unbelievable amount of information that's pouring out every day, and my guess is that my guess is that it probably seemed something like that, when the printing press first started really going strong. Like, people were like, wow, we're being inundated. We're getting a pamphlet a week over here, so I think we're getting a huge amount of stuff, and it's not going to slow down. And within that, like, given what you do here, within that, there's a lot of video. In fact, video becomes, in many ways, like the new vernacular, the lingua franca. When we are trying to figure out, do you remember Trump? When we were trying to figure out, like, what that guy was doing?
No, I don't.
Yeah, good. It worked. trying to figure out what that guy was doing. Like it was video, like it was the medium of record. You know, you see all these judges that are like photographed. This is clearly an unformed answer, okay, to your unformed question. I'm reveling in the unformedness of this answer, actually. Thanks, Brad. When you see judges that are like in front of a wall of like all these legal volumes and stuff, the actual evidence that we've relied on for Trump, like not the, precedents and all, for all that stuff have been captured on video. And 450 years from now or whatever, like what's going to be behind the magistrate who we respect the most? Is it going to be those volumes again? Or is it going to be like that screen that's in, NE48 that's just, sitting like, I think, so we have to figure out ways of getting a handle on it, of indexing it. And the leadership role in that, I really think is two places, three places. WGBH, the Internet Archive, and Sound and Vision in the Netherlands, which is the state broadcast archive.
Thank you, Peter. We've just about run out of time. Thank you, everybody, for coming and participating. And thanks again for giving us a view into your book, Peter. And yeah, take care, everybody. Be well.